Hello and welcome. My name is Martin Stone from Switch On Health, and today we will be talking about the Bach Flower Remedy Rock Rose. Now, this is the very first Bach Flower Remedy that appears in Edward Bach's book, The 12 Healers. I've actually got a little copy here that you can see, very old copy. And it's a little bit ironic that we'll be talking about this remedy first because it is the first remedy that appears in the book. That's why we're going to be talking about it first. It's a little bit ironic that it's the first one we're doing because, in my opinion, Rock Rose is also a remedy that possibly will be the least used remedy, the remedy that you'll use the least out of all of the Bach Flower remedies. And we'll discuss why as we go through this presentation. Now, one of the reasons why it is in my opinion, not very often used remedy is because it is the remedy for emergencies, and because it's a remedy for emergencies, it appears in Bach's Rescue Remedy. So, normally, when there's an emergency, what ends up happening is that you end up using Rescue Remedy, so it's not that often that you actually use Rock Rose by itself or with other remedies, because normally when there's an emergency, you don't think about mixing up a formula with different remedies in it. You just whip out your Rescue Remedy and that's the one that you use. Now, as divine chance would have it, I've said that this is probably at least my least used Bach Flower Remedy. However, today we're actually in a situation in Australia where a lot of people would probably benefit from this particular remedy. So divine timing that I chose to make this video today when for once there are a lot of people that probably would really benefit from Rock Rose. So just to put this into context for you, exactly 1 week ago we shot a live session titled How to Protect Yourself Against Viruses. Now, that was exactly 1 week ago, and in that session I showed some photographs of what our local supermarket looked like. Toilet paper aisle completely bare, tissues completely bare, yet the fresh produce section was like this bountiful paradise with fresh fruit and vegetables and all the antioxidants and phytochemicals that you could get your hands on. 4 days later, that had changed, and it's as if somebody had flicked a switch, and the country seems to have gone into panic mode because people are no longer just panic buying toilet paper, they're panic buying everything. People are really scared either about the coronavirus or they are scared about the country going into lockdown and not being able to get their hands on essential items like food. So people are stocking up and people are worried and scared and panicking, and Rock Rose would be a good remedy for them in this particular situation. So, Rock Rose is a remedy for panic, and we'll go through Rock Rose now and let's have a look at all its different aspects. So, this is what the flower looks like, Helianthemum numularium, and beautiful looking flower. I don't think anybody could look at this flower and not be moved by how amazing nature is. Now, as we know, there are 7 categories that Dr. Bach put his flower essences into. This first category is for those who have fear, and the very first remedy is, of course, Rock Rose, and this is what Dr. Bach said about it. The remedy of emergency for cases where there even appears no hope. In accident or sudden illness, or when the patient is very frightened or terrified, or if the condition is serious enough to cause great fear to those around. If the patient is not conscious, the lips may be moistened with the remedy. Other remedies in addition may also be required as, for example, if there is unconsciousness, which is a deep sleepy state, clematis. If there is torture, agrimony, and so on. So let's have a look at our keywords for rock rose, because keywords are a really great way to learn the flower remedies. And our keywords for rock rose: panic, terror, extreme fear. This is a remedy when people think we're doomed. This is it. This is the end. The end is nigh. Now, we'll talk quite a bit about what happens in people's brains when this happens, but what I've said is rock rose, it's the remedy for emergencies. So it is, of course, found in rescue remedy. So quite often when you're using rock rose, you're just using rescue remedy. That's absolutely fine. But what happens when somebody panics? What happens when they're in that state of extreme fear? They could just become paralyzed. It could even be physical. People might just lock up and not know what to do. Mentally, definitely, they could just become completely incapacitated, frozen with fear. Stage fright is something that some people will get. Unable to take action, people just, they don't know what to do. The fear is just overwhelming. They could manifest with completely irrational behaviour, and we've probably seen some of this in the supermarkets when people decide they need to buy 12 months worth of toilet paper, but nothing else. I don't know what they're going to eat for the next 12 months if there is some sort of global catastrophe, but we could have irrational behaviour. We could have running away. That's a great way to protect yourself and survive. When you're in that panicky situation, usually panic is a result of fear for one's survival. So running away is something that some people might do. They might also engage in distractive behaviour. So it's as if, if you can imagine your house is on fire and then somebody turns around and starts washing up the dishes. It's completely irrational, but washing up the dishes takes their mind off the fact that the house is burning down. In that situation, you would also combine with the Bach Flower Agrimony, which is for denial. These are the sorts of things we might see with rock rose. Now, what happens when you're panicking, is that the blood is diverted away from the prefrontal cortex, which is a part of your brain where you carry out logical thinking and make decisions and, act rationally and are able to solve problems, basically. Now, when you're in a state of panic, the blood's not flowing to that part of the brain. It basically flows to the back of your brain and, really all your energy is going into just surviving, not thinking clearly. So rock rose will help people to think more clearly and make better decisions when they're in a dangerous situation, which is, of course, actually going to enhance their chances of survival. Actually, before I move on, I'll just quickly say there's a very good kinesiology technique called emotional stress release to help to bring blood back to the right part of the brain, but we can talk about that another time. So when might we use rock rose? Well, any emergency, basically. So motor vehicle accidents might be one example. Anywhere there's trauma, anything that's going to affect anybody who's a witness to it, anything really scary, anything where your physical survival actually is threatened. Obviously, this doesn't replace proper medical care. Panic attacks, it's really obvious. If a client came to see you and they said they were experiencing panic attacks, well, you'd think panic, that's my keyword for rock rose. Panic attacks, is a great indication for rock rose. What do people think when they're having a panic attack? Quite often they feel as if they're going to die. It might not be logical, but it doesn't matter whether you're actually really going to die or not. What matters is that feeling, that emotion, that sensation, that panic. Who cares whether it's justified or not? If somebody's feeling it, that's when you would give this remedy. Now, somebody could also be having, an acute medical condition. They could be having an acute asthma attack. They could be having a heart attack. In both of these situations, their survival is actually threatened. They could actually die. So rock rose is going to help, together with whatever other treatment is necessary and appropriate, of course. Now, what if it's not acute? What if it's kind of on the horizon? So let's say, for example, somebody gets diagnosed with a serious illness or a terminal illness. Maybe they get told they've got cancer. It could be breast cancer, could be colon cancer. The doctor could be saying, we're going to do our best, we're going to treat it, we're going to cut it out, we're going to give you chemotherapy, whatever it might be. For a lot of people, they may well feel as though this could be it for me, which it may well be. I would prescribe with Star of Bethlehem in this situation, because that's the remedy for shock. Now, you might also want to consider this for that person's partner or their immediate family, because their partner may well be freaking out and thinking, oh my gosh, what if my spouse dies? They may go into a state of panic as well, and they will probably also need Star of Bethlehem for the shock of hearing that news. So these are good sort of physical medical conditions we've talked about. As I said, it doesn't have to be physical. Students in exams could be one. Fear of financial survival, definitely. These two often go together. Unfortunately, a lot of our teenage children are subjected to extreme pressure at a time of their lives when, let's face it, puberty is biologically the most difficult and challenging time you're ever going to go through in your entire life. And at the same time, you've got people saying to you, you know what, if you don't do really well in school right now, then the rest of your life is just not going to be that great. So no wonder kids get nervous in exams, and they carry that through with them right into adulthood, quite often for the rest of their lives. It is fear of survival, fear of financial survival. Anybody that's got, what if this is it for me? What if I can't survive? Rock rose would be good. If feeling unsafe while travelling, so this could be, fear of flying, for example, getting on an aeroplane before you're going to fly, take some rescue remedy or some rock rose. Stockbrokers jumping out of windows, hopefully this doesn't happen nowadays. Maybe it's a myth, I don't know, from the 70s and the 80s. But, people who, they're looking at the numbers, the accountants, and they think, oh my gosh, there's no way out of this. I'm done for. That's it, out the window. Anywhere where there really seems no hope. Looks like I'm repeating myself here. Students and exams, fear of financial survival, fear of social survival. People get terrified about becoming a social outcast, and there are good evolutionary reasons for why we want to remain accepted by our tribe. It increases our chances of survival. Social media, people may well end up in a panic about what other people will think of them and whether they'll still be accepted by their social network or their peers. Fear of relationship survival. Oh my gosh, what would I do if my partner left me? I'll never survive. Public speaking, something that terrifies a lot of people. Before you get on a stage, rescue remedy would probably be good, or you could just go for rock rose and whatever other remedies are appropriate. Armed services, so military personnel. Now, this is an interesting one because people that are in the armed services, are usually trained to be able to effectively deal with extremely stressful situations where their survival may be at stake, and think not just the people on the front line, but also, the generals, the commanders, the people that are responsible for their troops' lives, for other men and women's lives. They may find themselves in situations where they think, oh my gosh, how can I get my people safely through this? When it looks as though the end may be nigh, we need these people to be able to think clearly and calmly and rationally. What happens when our military personnel come back home? They may well have post-traumatic stress disorder, in which case you could combine Rock Rose with Star of Bethlehem and whatever other remedy is appropriate. Remember, Rock Rose, it's that terror, it's that extreme fear. Parents whose kids are ill or injured, there's another remedy you could combine with here, which is red chestnut. We'll look at that another time. Remember, if one person's injured and another person gets really affected by it, that's Rock Rose. Animals, of course, don't forget our animals. They respond really well to flower essences. Animals in extreme fear could manifest in different ways. It could manifest with urinary or fecal incontinence. It could be shaking and trembling. Could be running away, like pets often do in thunderstorms. Could even be attacking someone close. Sometimes animals, when they're really terrified, they'll attack whoever is nearest to them. And it's just a way of trying to maintain their survival, and they're not thinking rationally. This is just a pure survival mechanism that happens in extreme fear. Finally, panic, terror, it might not always be acute. It could be a chronic, ongoing thing in somebody's life. They may well be disguising it well. It could just be simmering under the surface, but it is possible for people to be going through life in a state of, under the surface panic, basically, extreme fear. So you might not see it a lot. It might be difficult to spot, but park it in the back of your mind, because it is possible that it could be a chronic emotional state for some people. Possible physical symptoms, well, we're looking at sympathetic nervous system response. So all the usual ones you would think of, dry mouth, trembling, dilated pupils. Obviously digestive upsets. We could have bowel issues, constipation, diarrhea, irritable bowel syndrome, encopresis. We could have urinary symptoms, polyuria, incontinence. Skin. When somebody's in a state of panic, they may look, like deathly white because all the blood is going to more important organs, like skeletal muscle, for example. They could be flushed, blushing, is thought to be a sympathetic response. It's a way of sort of warding off potential attackers, really. Hypertension, blood pressure goes through the roof often when we're under that extreme stress. Hyperpnea, rapid breathing, difficulty articulating speech, possibly fainting, syncope, possibly even ataxia, not even being able to walk straight, really. So famous examples. There is really only one famous example I can think of for a Rock Rose person. It's a little bit nerdy. This is Denethor in The Lord of the Rings Part 3, The Return of the King. And I've put a little YouTube link there for you to watch it if you like, just a 90-second, not the whole 3 hours, just a 90-second bit of this scene. If you don't want to watch it, I'll give you a synopsis. So Denethor he's a pretty useless pseudo king, and when his castle is attacked, he goes into this classic Rock Rose state. Oh my gosh, I can't do anything. This is it. We're all doomed. And he shouts out to the people and the troops below, abandon your posts, flee for your lives. And I like this scene because when you watch it, you'll see that the effect on everybody else is that they panic and they don't know what to do, and they start running in all different directions, you know. So I think it's a really good example of a person in a rock rose state. Of course, what you need when your kingdom is under attack, whether it's orcs and goblins or, you know, somebody else, you know, what you need is a leader who can lead the people into battle and be fearless. You know, if your leader turns around and runs off, then yeah, everybody else is going to get pretty scared as well. What's the opposite? The opposite is Gandalf, of course. Calm and courage, two beautiful words when you put them together. You know, in the face of extreme terror or emergency, calm and courage, this is what you need. Airline pilots, I think, are a fantastic example of the positive aspect of rock rose. You know, the engines both blow up simultaneously, and they don't panic. You know, they get out their manual and say, okay, engine failure, turn to page 20. Second engine's failed. Okay, try this, flick that switch. No, that didn't work. Okay, what do we do next? And there could be 600 people behind them whose lives depend on them, and they're able to stay calm. I think that's a really positive aspect to rock rose. So they don't need rock rose. If it was me in the cockpit, I definitely would, because hands would be shaking. I wouldn't be able to read the manual. I wouldn't be very good in that situation. Dosage. If you're using the stock remedy, 2 drops into a glass of water, sip at intervals. If you've already diluted the stock into a remedy bottle, 4 drops underneath the tongue as often as you need to. Okay, so that is it for our very first Bach Flower Remedy. I hope you enjoyed it. Learn more with Switch On Health.